All right, welcome. Hello, everybody. We're starting a new unit today. As I'm sure you well know, we are into, what is this, week 8 now of our trimester, 7 or 8. But anyway, point is that we've got 2 units remaining, okay? And about 2 weeks left for each of those. So we've basically talked about all of the, what shall I say, the branches of government. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about some focused items like this, like the political parties, elections, and public policy. And then the last unit that we will be discussing has to do with public and foreign policy. So this is like how we deal with ourselves, elections, our own public policy. And then the last unit will be looking abroad, looking at other countries and how relations are with those countries. So just so you have an idea of what we have up and coming now. I did not get to putting your Unit 7 stuff into the gradebook, but I should be able to get that stuff into the gradebook by the end of today, okay? I've got a true prep hour today, so I should be able to hammer all of those out for this class, especially. But yeah, we're starting a new unit today, and this is what it looks like right here, okay? Political parties, elections, and public policy, but we're going to start right out with a little Quizlet Live so that you can get some of those terms already. After that, we're going to do a quick brain pop video that it's about 7 minutes in length that has to do with our bipartisan system, our Republicans and Democrats today. Then I am going to introduce to you the Unit 8 document, and we will take a look at some stuff directly out of there. We'll even start playing one of the games that you see there, or some of you might get as far as to start one of the podcasts. We'll read an upfront article together and then finish it up with a little CNN 10, and then we'll call it a Tuesday, folks. But you guys know what we're doing. Let's go right to Quizlet Live right now, please. Votes. Seven, 88438. Let me get it up there for our students that are online. Whoa, big gulp, huh? Wow. A little thirsty this morning. Don't you hammer one of those every day? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's see. Who do we have online? Let's see. Missing just a couple of you. Give about 30 seconds, and then we're going to go. Why did I even have to look at my watch? Obviously, it's May 4th. May the 4th be with you, right? All right, here we go. Let's do this thing. Round one. There are your spirit animals in there. Racing. All right, here we go. Round two. Making a lot of mistakes right now, but that is okay. Try to get into the next round. It's 7, 8, 8, 4, 3, 8. Yeah. This is it, folks. Last one. This one's for all the Tostitos. And they're racing. Awesome. Gymnastics. All right, all right, all right. Very good. Would everybody just pay attention to this short video for me, please?
In conclusion, I'd like to point out that, unlike my opponent, I care deeply about the fate of the human race. And, if elected, I will never force you to kneel before all powerful robot overlords. Thank you.
Senator Moby, you have 30 seconds to respond.
I can't believe I'm losing to this guy.
The next question comes from Mikey, a 5th grader in Kansas City. He asks, what's the difference between Democrats and Republicans? Governor Tim, you have 3 minutes to answer.
Oh, a letter. Haven't I gotten this question before? The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are the United States' two major political parties, and they've both been around for a long time. Some people say that the Democratic Party began in 1792 when Thomas Jefferson founded the Democratic Republicans, who opposed a strong central government. But that party eventually split up, so other people say that the Democrats grew out of a branch led by Andrew Jackson. Jackson and his followers believed in limited government powers and a strict interpretation of the Constitution. He was elected president in 1828. The Republican Party, also known as the Grand Old Party, was formed in the 1850s by a group of anti-slavery politicians. The United States was expanding westward, and they wanted to prevent slavery from spreading to new states and territories. Abraham Lincoln campaigned on this issue in 1860, and that year he was elected as the first Republican president. That's correct. The parties have changed a lot over the past 2 centuries, shifting their positions on quite a few issues. Here's where the Democrats and Republicans stand today. For the last 100 years or so, the Democrats have been the more left-leaning or liberal party. That means most Democratic politicians think the federal government should help make sure everyone has the opportunity to succeed. So, many of them support things like guaranteed health care for everyone and increased spending on government services like public education. That's right, these programs cost money, and that money usually comes from taxes. Generally, Democrats aren't afraid to raise taxes as long as they think it will benefit society as a whole. They also tend to believe that higher taxes on big businesses and wealthy people help keep American society running smoothly. Some well-known Democratic presidents include Franklin Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, and Bill Clinton. Hold your horses, I'm getting there. The Republican Party today has a more right-leaning or conservative philosophy. Republicans tend to believe that taxing businesses and the wealthy gets in the way of economic growth. So, many Republican politicians support lower taxes for everyone, which allows people and businesses to spend their money as they choose. Well, many Republicans believe that the government should play a smaller role in people's lives. They think that hard work and personal responsibility, not government intervention, should lead to economic success. So, Republicans in general are a lot less likely to embrace wide-reaching social programs. On the other hand, most Republicans do favor government spending on the military. Well-known Republican presidents include Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and George W. Bush. Well, there are actually lots of other issues the two parties argue over, but the moderator's giving me this stink eye, so I better move on. For once, my opponent is correct. Not everyone who belongs to a political party agrees with everything that party stands for. Sometimes they support only a few of their party's core beliefs. They can even agree with many of the opposing party's positions. It happens all the time. In Congress, Democrats often vote alongside Republicans, and vice versa. Now, this may surprise my opponent, but close to 40% of American voters don't belong to either party. Some belong to smaller parties, like the Green Party, or the Libertarian Party, or the Reform Party. Others prefer to remain independent and don't join any party at all. They can still vote in general elections, but usually not in primaries or caucuses.
Sorry, Governor Tim, but your time is up. Senator Moby, your rebuttal.
Aw, I was tired of partisan bickering too, you big goon.
Everybody right now, let's go to Schoology, if you would please. Find that new folder and see if you can find a way to open up that Unit 8 document and put that right into Schoology for me, please. Okay, rolling right down our list here. We are at we did our Quizlet Live, we did our Brain Pop video, and now we're going to answer the first question right out of our Unit 8 document. So, I'm trying to think if I have any Hamilton fans in here. Anybody a fan? Yeah. Know the song One Last Time? You familiar with that one? George Washington's farewell address. Probably one of the most famous pieces of rhetoric in American history. Okay. Now, I'm not into great man history. That's not kind of my jam. But one thing that I do want to throw General Washington's way was that after the Revolutionary War, he didn't really think he was going to be a part of government at all. But Congress actually offered him a crown and said, we'd like you to be our king. And he spurned it. And he just went, no, that's not what this is going to be about. And they created something completely new. And that president, okay, that figurehead, is completely unique, not just in American politics, but in politics. Do you get what I'm getting at here? So the greatness that I'm talking about with George Washington was a new definition of greatness. It was the renunciation of power. It was him saying, I don't want your power. And that was unprecedented in world history. For a conqueror, imagine Napoleon, Alexander the Great, or some of these people that had just won a war and then said, I'm good. I don't think I want to be your monarch. That was pretty amazing. Okay. So we all know that George Washington had how many terms as president? 2, right? He set the precedent for the president. And after 2, he walked away. Now, what was weird about that is that nobody saw it coming. When he came up and gave his farewell address, it was basically this idea that, guys, I'm done. You're going to have to find somebody new. And in doing so, he set the precedent that this would be a rotating position and not necessarily one that was for life. Which is pretty neat, I think. Okay? But also, in Washington's farewell address, he gave warning that, look, if we want this democracy to succeed, I would advise you to do a couple different things. Number one, okay, you should beware of bipartisan politics. And number 2, you should really beware of getting involved in foreign affairs, which I still can't even gather today how he predicted these 2 issues being an issue in our future. Pretty neat, right? So prior to leaving the office of the president, George Washington warned the country about the dangers posed by political parties. Party loyalty upsets the community with unproven bitterness and false alarms, sets off the dislike of one part against another, causes occasionally riot and insurrection. Insurrection, we've heard that word lately, haven't we? It opens the door to foreign influence and corruption. Despite this warning, the powers of political parties have grown in the U.S. Do you see any of the warnings given by America's first president playing out here in the U.S. right now? There can be no wrong answer to this, but I want you to answer this right now. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Go. This is completely your opinion. Party politics. Help us, hurt us? What do you think? Was Washington right? No Safraz, no Samantha, no Derek, and no Stanley? No Stanley? Okay. Okay. I got one more.
They like all the attention people give them.
Need your help in interpreting chicken emotion.
Would you like a picture?
Yeah. You tell they move according to the way of their others when they're propped up or when they strut.
Yeah. You can tell if they're anxious, they get really
Okay.
jumpy,
Really? Okay.
but a lot of the times they just lay down and let me.
Wow. That's funny. Okay, very good, folks. I trust that everybody was able to answer that one. These next slides here, we're actually going to skip over this part, and I want to do this later in the week. So the part that says notes 8.1, would you mind skipping past this part for me? Okay, and then I think the next thing that it asks for is, I might have to double check this. I can't remember which one's first. Is it the podcast or is it the game? Right after the notes section. Mine's slow to load here. Oh, there it is. Should we get, oh, it's the video. Should we get rid of political parties? I'm going to play this for you right now as a class. And essentially, this is going to be like the last thing that we do whole group. And then I'm going to have you answer some of the questions. So while I'm getting this set up, would you all read the questions below where it says watch the video? Okay. Do we need political parties? Read that real quick because we're going to watch this video. And then we're going to answer the corresponding questions, my dudes.
Political parties, it's hard to imagine American life without them. And in our country, where two major parties reign supreme, the dynamic can feel like good versus evil, right versus wrong, or us versus them. But life isn't black and white. Are political parties to blame for the polarizing place we are now? And what would happen if they disappeared?
America, what it is. Obligation. More serious.
We're so used to the never-ending struggle between the Republican and Democratic parties that it might have surprised you to hear in our episode about electing Supreme Court justices that the founding fathers didn't want political parties in the United States. In fact, Thomas Jefferson once said, "If I could not go to heaven but with a party, I would not go there at all." So where did they come from? Well, get this. Thomas Jefferson ended up eating his words and founded one of the first political parties, the Democratic Republicans, the answer to the Federalist Party, which had formed around Alexander Hamilton and his desire for a strong central government.
This gets to a brass tack, just like what is a political party. This isn't something that's created by a constitution. These emerge extra-constitutionally, extra-legally. E. Schatzsnyder called a political party an organized effort to get control of the government.
Where has this gotten us? Well, some people would say that the political gridlock we experience today is all due to political parties. Not only are politicians of different parties not getting along, average citizens find it hard to talk to people with differing political views. According to the Pew Research Center, more than half of Democrats say the Republican Party scares them, while nearly half of Republicans say the same thing about Democrats.
There's a great book by Liliana Mason this year that basically talks about how all of our personal values have become deeply intertwined with political ideology. It used to be in the 60s and 70s, U.S. parents, how did you feel about your children marrying someone of the opposite race? And a very healthy majority would not be in favor. But someone of the opposite party, no problem. Now that is flipped. And parents are deeply concerned about their children marrying someone of the opposite party.
Do the benefits outweigh the drawbacks, or vice versa? If we created America from scratch today, would we outlaw political parties? Go back to our roots and keep them out of politics entirely? Outlawing political parties might not be the most practical idea for the U.S. After all, they weren't a part of our country when it was first started, but they came into being naturally over time.
What would it take to outlaw political parties? What political parties are fundamentally not legalized in the first place. They are just the manifestation of people coming together in a group and organizing their political behavior in a certain way. If you want to imagine a system that outlaws that, you are imagining a system that significantly curbs people's ability to express political views and to coordinate their political behavior with other people. It would precisely be snuffing out the liberty that is both the lifeblood of democracy as well as the lifeblood of parties.
And focusing solely on Democrats and Republicans leaves out an important factor: the United States third parties. They've played an important part in our history, too.
Richard Hofstadter, a historian, once said that in American history, third parties are like bees. Once they sting, they die. But they do sting.
They can still hold the major parties accountable. When a lot of elections are closed, every vote counts. So even worrying about potential voters voting for a third-party candidate, that gives an incentive for the major parties to try to appeal to those third-party voters. So one important thing that third parties have done in American politics is that they've spurred change within one or both of the major parties.
So the most famous example of that would be the Whig Party and the Democratic Party in the middle of the 19th century being internally divided over the question of slavery. It took a third-party effort connected to grassroots movements for abolition to sufficiently, at the local level, kind of threaten to bump them off in elections or to throw the election to the Democrat in a kind of spoiler race. And in that case, the third party ended up essentially taking over the Whig Party. The Whig Party split so completely that the Republican Party grew in its stead and took a lot of Northern Whigs with them.
What if we diversified the playing field by increasing the number of major political parties, giving people more options, more ways to identify? Would it diminish the prevailing us versus them narrative? Some experts say in order to do this, it would take a rewrite of our political system. You see, in our presidential elections, each state, except for Nebraska and Maine, gives all of its electoral votes to the winning candidate in a winner-takes-all contest. This discourages citizens from voting for third-party candidates because this is seen as throwing your vote away, since there isn't a prize for winning even the second most votes.
So we would need to make changes to election laws in order to help third parties win office. So each district elects one representative, and it's just of all the candidates, the one that wins the most votes wins that seat. In those countries with multi-member districts, a party that comes in third place can win the third most seats. In the United States, if you come in third place, you win nothing. You have to come in first place.
You have a system where right now, invariably, the votes are going to go to the top two, Republican and Democrat big party candidates. The only role that these third parties end up playing tends to be a spoiler role. In a ranked choice voting system, you have a chance for people to vote for a third party without it playing a spoiler role. And if enough people vote for that third party as, say, their second choice, you can end up actually having third party candidates win.
We're looking at Maine for our Local Matters series. Next month, the Pine Tree State will try out a new form of voting in which people can vote for more than one candidate. It's called ranked choice voting.
So ranked choice voting is a system where instead of voting for just one candidate, you are able to rank all of your candidates in the order of your preference. And so if my first choice candidate doesn't win, my vote isn't just thrown out, it then accrues to my second candidate. And if that candidate doesn't get a majority, then my third candidate is counted, right? And so forth until you get to a majority. So I'd say the biggest pros are twofold. One, it gives voters more choice, right? You no longer have a situation where you shouldn't vote for the candidate that is really your number one choice. So it tends to increase voter turnout. And it provides different incentives for candidates. Much less negative campaigning, much more positive and constructive campaigning.
If people are dissatisfied with the major parties, one thing you do is try to change them. And one way to change them is through influencing who do they nominate for the general election. So that's where you can get involved in a primary election. If you care about the political process, we focus a lot on voting, but there's a lot of other stuff you could do. You could volunteer for a candidate's campaign. You can donate money. You can attend a political rally to voice your opinion. And there's different strategies you can use. You can either try to work from within a party, or you can go kind of from the outsider route. You can support a third party candidate, or you could put more effort in supporting an interest group. That interest group could then help transform one of the two major parties. A lot of options that people have in trying to decide, where can I get involved to make a difference.
So what do you think? Do you think political parties are to blame for many of our government's problems and we should do away with them altogether? Or should we add more political parties? Let us know. Thanks for checking out this episode of America from Scratch. Be sure to check us out during our live podcast, September 1st.
Especially since whenever, it doesn't matter what election you're talking about, people will inevitably bring up third-party candidates that they, in a sense, that they actually do more damage than any good. And I think the best example that people always refer back to would be the case of Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, Teddy Roosevelt was president for a couple of terms, and then he prepped who he considered to be his protege. This guy right here, William Howard Taft. So both Republicans. Okay. Now, when he came into the presidency, Roosevelt didn't think that he was progressive enough, and he didn't think that he was following the formula that he set forward. Okay. So before there was the amendment that you could not run for more than 2 terms, he tried to run for a third. When this election happened, okay. So here's your Republican candidate. Here was your Democratic candidate, and this was your, anybody know what party he created? Good guess, though. He called it the Bull Moose Party. Bull Moose Party. So what happened was you got your 2 parties, right? And if we were to just assume that the general population is 50% Democrat, 50% Republican, which we know that's not true, but just stay with me here. 50% Democrat, 50% Republican. What happened is Teddy ended up splitting the Republican Party in 2, right? Because half of them voted for his Bull Moose Party and half voted for this one. And that left roughly 50% that ended up voting for Wilson. Does that make sense? And that's how we went from 2 Republican candidates, 1 Bull Moose candidate actually, to a Democratic president pretty quickly. Does that make sense? Yes? So that's the example that people always bring up about third-party candidates. And it actually was an issue again, even in like the early, even in the 1990s. There was a candidate that ran on an independent platform named Ross Perot. You guys ever heard of Ross Perot before? Okay. Didn't really have the same impact that we saw with these other ones, but that's always the case, is that people will bring up like third-party candidates and go, Nader or Ralph Nader is hurting the outcome of the Democratic Party or something like that. Okay. Not that I agree with those takes, but that's kind of where that thought process is coming from about third parties hurting that concept. Okay. But we've already seen today a couple of examples of what might be a different approach to what we're talking about. So, We've got, should we have our, should we get rid of political parties? You can see the answers that you can get rid of right there. Okay. And the next thing that I would do right on your list there, you know, you can answer the, do you think the United States should be better off with a multi-party system based upon the video that we just watched? Then read that part underneath there that starts with campaigns can cost millions of dollars. And then once you're done with that, I would say today would be a great day for you to click on the Civics 101 episode of Super PACs and start to learn what the rip a Super PAC is and what that has to do with the political party system, okay? That is all that I have for the online group today, unless my online cohort has got a question about something